to do now is we're going to introduce our keynote. He is one of our own. Ryan Linn is a security strategist for a large financial institution. His background is red teaming, penetration testing, incident response, and forensics. He's helped him to understand many of the challenges that security practitioners face today. He enjoys sharing his knowledge at places like DEF CON, Black Hat, Triangle InfoSeCon, and other security conferences. He has helped train individuals around the world on hacking and incident response techniques and has incorporated this information into books like Gray Hat Hacking. Good book, go get it. Ryan is the leader of a red team, a penetration tester, an author, a developer, an educator. He comes from systems administration and web application development background with many years of IT security experience. Ryan currently works as the team lead for a red team at a large organization and is a contributor to open source projects including Metasploit, Beef, and browser exploitation framework. Without further ado, please give a virtual round of applause to Mr. Ryan Linn.
Thanks, Devon. I appreciate it. Well, thanks everybody for coming out. Good morning and welcome to the 2020 Triangle InfoSeCon. This year, we're obviously doing a virtual conference and it's been a year of change all around. Not only have we had a global pandemic, but we've seen worldwide civil unrest. You can now join a dead pool with odds on which world leaders have gotten COVID. Brexit was finalized and US politics have become some of the most polarized of our lifetimes according to voter turnouts. Employers have filed record numbers of bankruptcy claims as well in 2020, including brands that have been in business for hundreds of years. And those that have stayed in business have to embrace drastic changes to talent strategies, workplace communication strategies, and business models to accommodate the quarantine. 2020 is a year that we all ran out of toilet paper. And think about the changes to the supply chain logistics and how that had to have occurred. And this has been just as hard on people and relationships. And not only have we seen the tragedy of the deaths in China, Italy, and New York from COVID, but many people are now living under the daily fear of homelessness as the government has had to freeze eviction proceedings and among the largest unemployment claims in our lifetime. So it's put a strain on our relationships. Quarantine has caused a lot of divorces. It's also given us new challenges for dating. And how do you date when everyone's wearing a mask? In Britain, no one could decide what safe sex looked like in a pandemic, and so sex between people who did not live together was briefly outlawed, and that's kind of crazy. And then you have murder hornets, fires, Midwestern derecho, the earthquakes in Puerto Rico, locust swarms, and all sorts of other things. And even in Phoenix, we had record temperatures of over 144 degrees. So combined with prolonged power outages on the West Coast, it's no wonder that everybody's stressed out and terrified. So change is scary, but it's worse when you aren't expecting it and when you don't have a plan. And so you'll see a lot of talks today about lessons learned from some of these things, from cloud to work from home to new techniques in detecting incidents. And these challenges are reflected in those talks, and I'm really excited to see these lessons learned. I've had a lot of personal changes this year as well. I never thought I'd really be teaching my mom how to use Zoom, especially for Pilates class. And the number of artisan bakers on Facebook has become so inspiring that I had to give it a shot. So that's my first artisan loaf of bread in the bottom right. And so now I see that folks are naming their sourdough starters, but we'll talk a little bit more about dealing with isolation later. So I've been involved in so many discussions lately about smoking meats that I think that those have some of been the most heated religious discussions that I've seen on Facebook. And so I've had to also find reasons to get out of the house, but not really around people. So I've been sending my dogs to agility training, which seemed adorable, but at least it's an excuse to get outside from time to time. I've also seen a lot of these changes in my friends as well. And the ones who are especially social, it's been hardest on. So we've been trying to keep connected the best that we can using technology. For most folks, work's had a ton of changes too. I think one of the biggest ones is rapidly adapting a large workforce over VPN. Migrating more and more services to the cloud to eliminate bottlenecks from this change as well, and figuring out how the logistics of work from home go in general. Things like, do we do video meetings or no? What do we do when everyone's dog barks at the same time? Are pajamas work attire now? And if I work from home, am I always at work? These are kind of the big things that I think a lot of people have been dealing with. So change is scary, and I thought it might be helpful to discuss a little bit about how I got more comfortable with change. And for the record, I think change is scary too. So I worry a lot in general. And if you've ever watched me try to wordsmith an email, you'd be like, quit overthinking it and just hit send. But the ironic part is when it comes to technology and learning and some of the broader strokes, I worry a whole lot less because of my experiences. And part of it's because of the things that I've learned on some of the hacker adventures I've had. And I want to share some of the stories with you and their outcomes, but I'll also dig into how to apply these things to you. And as it turns out, as I've learned, I've made a lot of missteps that I wish I could go back and fix, but I think some people call that wisdom. And I'm going to point out a little bit later that failure is a great educator, and what happens next is really what shapes things for you. So a little bit more about me. I worked at programming jobs before college. I started off doing web development and basic systems administration. But Harry Nicholas at NC State gave me my first job as a sysadmin in the IT department in 2000. And it was when I was still in college. This was a huge change for me. Suddenly, I was responsible for admitting web services, file services, and email services for thousands of users instead of dozens. And I was doing a lot more consulting and working with Harry to interface with groups across the entire organization. One of the things that we were doing is we were setting expectations and driving secure solutions that required a lot more thought than before, and everything seemed new. Now, imagine the sheer terror of being responsible for a completely silent server room. It turns out that DR planning does not account for squirrels with a death wish, but I got to be part of a team who figured out over a weekend how to work together to get things back in working order when the plan failed. It turned out to be a great learning experience and a tremendous team builder. I stayed there for almost 8 years. I was comfortable, I was doing well, and initially I was learning a ton. I had some very amazing coworkers to learn from, and I'd really made my own place after about 4 years. And I stayed. I probably would have stayed a lot longer had someone not given me a swift kick in the pants. But even when I did decide to leave, I was really nervous. Now, I was scared. What if I couldn't do this next job? What if I didn't know enough or I couldn't figure it out? What if I failed? What if I didn't fit in? What if the new job is a bad move? That fear of change, that self-doubt, that's what holds us back. So one of my NCSU friends, Brian Wilson, I'll drive him in a SAS in 2007 for my first corporate security job. And SAS was a great company to work for. It allowed me to grow quite a bit on both the technical and the business side. And while I was there, I found a mentor during SANS training. Ed Scotus really helped push me a lot in the right direction. So with more people encouraging me to move forward, I was able to grow personally with more and different job experiences. I learned more about what I wanted to be doing, what I was capable of doing, and ultimately the kinds of things I enjoyed and didn't enjoy. I also figured out where I wanted to head next. So it became evident at that point that many of the job options that I thought were out of my reach were only inaccessible due to my own confidence. And so I'd been afraid of making the changes I needed to make. I resolved to accept change and volunteer for more responsibility. So I resolved to put myself out there and talk about the things that I'd learned. One of the people I met along the way was Nick Prococo at the Sector conference in Toronto. And I'd been presenting on Metasploit, and talking with Nick after Sector, I decided to apply to TrustWave Spider Labs. This was my very first consulting gig, and it was my first full-time hacking job. It was completely different work, and I hadn't done that type of work before. I got to work with some amazing hackers, and it was a great opportunity to learn a lot from a lot of different people. But I came in with a lot of trepidation. I knew that I could do some of this stuff, but it had been hired on as a senior without having done any of this before. And I thought to myself, is this going to be a ton of work? Am I going to mess it up? I know it is, but I'm sure I can do it. So I ended up becoming a managing consultant and leading a team there and helped set the direction. I ended up presenting at DEF CON, Black Hat, and other places along the way as well. So as I was presenting at these bigger and bigger conferences as an introvert, it was another big challenge. And that challenge was pretty abrupt. So I'd been presenting to some smaller groups, a maximum of 60 or 70, and then suddenly it was crowds of 500. For the first time that this was the first time that I really presented to this many people, and it was hundreds of people, and so I was pretty much in shock afterwards. It was so bad that my wife ended up having to drag me to the discussion room post the talk, and I'm much better now, but being an introvert who does talks is a whole nother thing in itself. So it was scary, but I believed I could do it, and I managed to push myself to do things that in a few years I would have never thought possible. So it was a shift to the hacker mindset. The more that I started to think like a hacker, the easier changes became. And since my start, I'd worked in education, consulting, technology, startups, and banking. In other words, I focused a lot on new experiences, and I hope that you see yourself in some of these areas. I've been able to push my comfort zone by making small changes, and these changes help me stay ahead. And even though I've been terrified of the big changes, over time it's allowed me to get to a point where new challenges are exciting. My confidence in communities of trust were building, and I was coming up with new attacks and presenting them around the world. The way that I was thinking had changed fundamentally, and I was starting to reflect that in a lot of the other aspects of my life. So one of the interesting things about hackers is the pandemic has caused even the hackers to make changes. And so let's talk a little bit about the hackers for a minute. So when the landscape for attacks change, the attackers can't just rely on what has been working. They have to adapt to these new technologies and trends. There isn't a stop. You have to keep going until your goal is achieved or you get kicked out of an environment. And just because you encounter something new doesn't mean you can give up. Hackers have to be resilient to changes in order to be effective. So why do I spend so much time thinking about what hackers do? And the answer is obvious. So I am one. I've been doing hacking full time since 2001, but I've been doing penetration testing and other offensive testing since 2008. I've had the opportunity to work with some amazing other hackers, and I'm a strategist for a team of hackers now. I've been lucky enough to work with a lot of great places doing this type of work and had the opportunity to train folks around the world on attacker and defense techniques. I've even had the opportunity to write some books, and needless to say, I've been privileged enough to share some of the information. I learned a lot with InfoSeCon attendees in the past, and one of the big things that I learned on my journey and try to still instill in my students and teammates is that change is hard, but with a little perspective, it's a whole lot less scary. So I think that most of us know what a hacker is, but I wanted to touch on a few concepts to help frame some of the aspects of hacking. First of all, there are criminal hackers and there are corporate hackers. In a lot of respects, what differentiates them is the contract that they have. Both are working towards a financial goal, using technology for their benefit. And in both cases, they're looking at compromising systems, stealing data, and more. Corporate hackers do it to strengthen their organization, but also for fun. And criminals do it against unwilling subjects to make money, but also for fun. And so for discussion purposes, I'm going to say that there's three types of hackers that I want to cover today. The first one is developers, and developers build software, push technology, and frequently are able to make tools to do things that they weren't intended to do. And this is a form of hacking. The result is building something. For pen testers, they help show how organizations, how the vulnerabilities that impact organizations affect them. They give them the so what of a vulnerability. Pen testers typically look at the systems with fixed scope and help answer the question, what happens if someone exploits this vulnerability and what does it mean for my organization? And most pen testers use common tools, although some may develop something new. They are focused on the technology itself. Red teamers are focused on the people, processes, technologies, and response capabilities. And red teams run threat simulations and emulations in the environment to help people understand what the impact of a hacker would be on the environment as a whole. So simulations use attacker techniques, tactics, and procedures in order to compromise systems by using the same types of things an attacker would do, where emulation uses the specific set of tooling and tactics that an actual threat actor would use. So this further helps organizations figure out how a specific threat actor is going to impact an organization and if their techniques can be seen. And it also helps helps people respond to those sort of things. One of the things that has been one of the biggest compliments that I've gotten recently is that a lot of the things, the threat simulations that I were doing, we were seeing people actually executing those attacks weeks or months later. They were becoming more in vogue with a lot of the threat actors. And so because our teams had seen those attacks before, they felt like they were prepared to respond to them if they showed back up in our environment. So one other area of hacker adaptation where you can really see this is with attack kits. And as everyone's probably noticed, ransomware is on the rise, and the hackers haven't just adapted. They're even working together a lot more. They're combining strengths and sometimes working together to weaponize popular attacks or provide disclosure services when folks don't pay a ransom. So this year, with all the moves to remote work, VPN attacks are on the rise. RDP attacks are becoming more and more popular, and things like Microsoft's zero login vulnerability that allows an attacker to take control of your domain controllers with any kind of access to an environment are becoming more popular. In order to stay effective, and also to make money, the attackers focus on the tactics that are working at the time and then change them up as things change. So exploit kits wrap up a lot of these techniques into a package that folks who can't write their own exploits can just buy. And these kits are frequently picked because of how frequently they're updated. And they change things to get around detection technologies. An interesting example of one of these kits was the Neutrino kit back in 2017. And for a while, it was one of the most popular exploit kits out there. And a big part, because they were updating the kit every few days to stay ahead of the defenders. And they had a big market. But when other exploit kits came out and started using some of their stuff, they saw more and more competitors come in. And ultimately, the changes slowed down. And then the developer made a big change and got out of the exploit kit game completely and moved to another area that was more profitable. Another interesting aspect of this example is that the author wasn't just a hacker. He or she was packaging tools, developing new things, and more. So the development ability was a big piece of the author's skill set. And when that aspect didn't work anymore, he or she was flexible enough to be able to move on. And part of that attacker mindset is not depending too much on any one skill and building a diversity of skills so that when challenges do arise, you have the tool sets to work through them. So how do hackers get comfortable with changes in these areas? Well, the answer is you work with the technologies until you're comfortable with them. So how do you do that? And most corporate folks read about things, create threat models, figure out how things are supposed to work, and then build controls against that. So what if there was another way though? Something that lets you take the controls outside of the theoretical and into the practical. And there is. So here's where you come into play, or your red team. If you don't have a red team, you can contract one out, or you can learn to do it yourself. So you want to configure systems in a way that they're supposed to be configured. And then you test. Test that they're working in the standard use cases, and then test by messing around with those use cases. What happens if things change? What happens if folks follow a different process, etc.? If you aren't looking for strange behavior, you're looking for types of things where you do and don't have visibility into that strange behavior. So you work to map these areas out and then revisit your assumptions. You reconfigure and you go back and you try messing with stuff again. So I've mentioned this to people before and they say things like, well, I don't know anything about whatever. So here are some secrets about hacking. Hacking is mostly malicious systems administration. And so most folks, when they think about hackers, they think that the hackers just know things. And the reality is that experience allows you to be more efficient at research. Good hackers know how to find the right things. And if you're afraid you'll break things, you'll miss out on a ton of learning opportunities. Breaking things and then undoing what you just did is one of the best training opportunities out there. Also, worrying that you won't figure it out is not a thing. So if you haven't figured it out, you just haven't asked the right questions. If you don't know how to do something, research the thing, figure out where you have gaps and research those, and just keep going until you get it. Experience in these areas will put you into a place where you'll be able to figure out almost anything. So one example of the research that I'll get is I'll frequently get intel about new 0 days. And so a lot of the time, these are in response to announced patches or other kind of things that are coming up. And as a result, folks don't necessarily know how the exploits are supposed to work. So I would say that an unfortunate number of these that I see published early on are actually very elaborate rickrolls. So they're meant to trick folks into believing that they're real. And when they have the folks that can't understand them, read them and try them, they get a good laugh. But working through these things will help you get better at your research and allow you to move from the person who doesn't get it to the one who's in on the joke in short order. We also have Storm CTF again this year. And if you haven't tried CTF before, it's not one of those areas where hackers can, this is one of the great areas where hackers can learn about the new things. So try some of the challenges. And I'll say that you will fail. You will fail. But you'll overcome some of these challenges. You'll do research, you'll try things, and they won't work. And ultimately, you'll figure out a way to get there. One of the interesting things about CTFs is that sometimes folks figure out ways to complete the challenges that even the author hadn't intended, and the author gets to learn things along the way. Try things, fail, work around them, and come out stronger. And it's one of the key aspects of a hacker mindset. Don't be afraid of failure. Learn from it, adapt, and you'll come out stronger on the other side. So today, go try the CTF. You may be surprised at your successes. Back at NC State, despite my trepidation and a lot of the worry that I couldn't do the job, Harry really had supported me. So he didn't know that I could do it, but he seemed pretty sure that I would be able to. And even when I didn't believe it, he was a great mentor. He taught me a lot about how to work with people, set expectations, and help drive secure solutions. But the big thing that he taught me was we can't stand in the way of change. If we do, people will find another way to do it without us. Instead, we have to help foster change in a safe way. I had even more support at TrustWave. One of my mentors, Sean Sherman, helped me better understand the business of hacking. This was a turning point in my understanding about hacking and jobs, and we'll talk about that when we talk about careers in a few minutes. But the opportunities at TrustWave also allowed me to get into forensics and incident response. With the support of Chris Pogue, Grayson Lennick, and Josh Brunswick, I stepped out of my comfort zone and joined Nuix to start a security consultancy in an already thriving e-discovery world and help bring them into the security space. So one of the things we were able to do is forensics. We were able to help do training, red teaming, and even more. So starting things from scratch was new ground, and we ended up building something really cool. In the process, we traveled around the world training folks on forensics and attack methodologies, building a name for ourselves and our company. Along with this, I created a lot of ways to promote myself. Between conferences, book writing, public speaking, building up certs, doing training, and other aspects, a lot of folks were aware of my skill set and willing to give me some additional opportunities based on that alone. So what does this mean to you? You don't need to go out and write a book, but conferences like this are opportunities to make contacts. Take advantage of some of the networking opportunities. Try new things, go in the CTF. Presenting is a good way to get your name out there. But wait, what if you don't know anything special? Here's some advice that was given to me that I think is really important to hear. One of the important things that the best hackers know is that there is always people out there that are smarter than you. So why share information if you're not one of the best? Well, you're the one sharing information and they aren't. So who cares what they know? Share what you do and help people build themselves, and people will take note. So it's easy to worry about whether or not someone who is smarter than you will call you out while you're standing on the stage at DEF CON. But the reality is you're doing the talk and they're not. So even if you're wrong about some aspect of it, you've still made more meaningful contribution than someone who shared nothing. Also, what a great opportunity it is to be wrong. I love the conversations just after a talk where someone asks me if I tried this thing that they figured out. Just remember to check your ego at the door. People respect that so much more. And part of knowing your stuff is knowing that you don't know everything. And that wisdom will get you very far. So this experience led me to Bank of America, where I got to lead their threat simulation team. Again, I found a supportive environment where I learned from Jameson Shears and others how to navigate large corporate environments and security within. So this was a huge growth opportunity for me, and hacking folks and trying to make them better is from the inside is a completely different skill set. So operating at the bank size is also a completely different thing. Speaking of large corporate environments, when we start thinking about the hacker mindset, how do we apply this to security in general? So security in corporations are typically really averse to change. We think about things like baselines and setting policies and defining rules for interactions. When folks start to push against these rules, we really start to get uncomfortable because we've worked towards a steady state where we understand how everything works, how they can fail, and how to monitor them. In addition, we've been pushing perimeter hardening for the last 30 years. For the last 10 years, we've been pushing treating the inside like the outside. Now, with everything moving to the cloud, where is the outside? Where is the inside? Where is the third party? This type of move is one where all the lines are blurred and we have to figure out how to adapt. There have been a few things in the last year that have really been drastic changes for most folks' models. First one's work from home. So for populations of most organizations, they've had some work from home in the past, but most of these organizations haven't had the quantity of these that they have right now. Bring your own devices. So a lot of places have started to implement some BYO strategies, but because of the rapid move to remote, a lot of people have had to embrace it a whole lot faster because simply getting laptops to all of their employees wasn't a thing. Another big one is third-party federation. Tools like Okta and other technologies that support federation and allow integration with Active Directory to get these third-party systems all integrated together. That's been another huge change for people in how they deal with authentication and technologies. We've also got things like Zoom and Skype and Teams. That's a lot of changes. So we've had the perimeter changing, the internal network's been changing, DLP concerns have changed, and policies have likely changed as well. So what do we do here? We need to listen to what people need to accomplish and figure out how to get them there. And very often in security, it feels like our job is to say no. but that's taking the easy way out. We need to be looking at what the goals are and how to get there safely. By being part of the change, we can shape it from the inside. Using our hacker mentality, we can figure out how to adapt the technologies to meet the needs of our customers and help organizations stay ahead. One of the things that I love about being a hacker and security in general is that orgs can use us for dispute resolution. Security deals with software, hardware, networking, databases, and more. So what happens when the networking team says, I can ping it, network's up, and the server team says, everything's running smoothly, it must be the software, and the software folks say, well, I can access it locally. These things seem to have a bit of a habit of going around and around, but with the skill sets the security team has, they can frequently get in and get to the root of the problem quickly. This is true for building things as well. And as more teams see you as more than just security folks, but instead folks can help, they can help work through complex problems, you'll really get additional visibility and recognition at work. And you'll also start seeing a lot more successes and a lot more people coming towards you. When I started doing sysadmin in 1995, part of it was running a MUD for fun, and part of it was professional, making websites, programming in Perl for those of you who are old enough to know that that's been a web programming language. And the first few jobs were while I was on summer break or while I was in school, and that really helped me figure out what and what I didn't want to do. I loved doing sysadmin things, and I started following Loft. Loft was one of the original hacker groups. I read a lot, but never thought that hacking would be something that was accessible to me. I watched from a distance and read sometimes, but mostly I was just in awe of folks like Olive One, who wrote Smashing the Stack for Fun and Profit, Mudge and Rainforest Puppy, who was one of the pioneers of web application hacking, and also many of the other hackers of the day. I didn't see a path from where I was to where they were. And it's not that I didn't think I could learn stuff. It was just that there were things that they were doing, and the things that they were doing just seemed so far away. I really had no idea how to get there. I didn't think that when I started, I could get there at all. I had some hopes. I call them shower dreams. Basically, if you ever sit in the shower and go, I wish I were a blah. Well, for a while, mine was, I wish I could be a hacker. The problem came when that got achieved. I worked with so many folks that were amazing, and it switched to, I wish I could lead a team of elite hackers. And it's kind of gone on from there. Now it's pretty much doing what I dreamed of. So I'm closer to don't screw it up. But those are still important. Figure out what you're driving towards, figure out what your shower dream is. In the end, I had some folks who had faith in me that pushed me and told me I'd figure it out. And after 3 years, I left my corporate security job to become a full-time hacker. And going from corporate security to consulting was a big change. But I got to work with some incredible folks that were super bright. And I was scared that, again, what if this was a bad move? For me, the change was initially very scary. Looking at my career, though, it turns out I was able to figure it out, become one of the highest delivering people on the team, and ended up becoming a managing consultant so that I could help others. And from there, it's been a matter of when I felt like I couldn't get out of something out of a job anymore, like I was no longer growing, that's when I knew that it was time for me to move on. And I needed to find the right time for myself and always keep growing. One of the other parts of the journey for me that other folks may find interesting, and I mentioned it before, is a lot of what I learned when I started out in sysadmin and programming, and also security, I learned from doing a project. The games that I was working on, people at the time told me were really a waste of my time. But I was using them to build skill sets in programming, debugging, managing multiple developers, securing features, and more. I found projects that I enjoyed working on, and that really helped me keep from burning out. So looking back at some of the code I wrote in 97, and unfortunately it is on the internet, I wouldn't say it's great, but who cares? It gave me a start in doing something that I would love. Others told me at the time it was a waste of my time, that I shouldn't be doing that. I should be doing something useful, studying something new. Don't play those games. But those were the things that built the skill set that the rest of my career was built on. So pick projects that you enjoy, even if other people may find them useless. Just make sure they're things that are developing the skills that will get you where you want to be. That seems to be the biggest problem when people start out. They don't know what to do. Find something you think you'll enjoy and start doing the research for what it takes to get there. It's something that is great learning. And if it's games, that's great. If it's hardware projects, then great. Just pick something. Pick something and really just get started. For those of you that are just getting started with your career, I want to share some of the knowledge that I've learned as well. So the first thing is going after your dream job for your first job may not be in your best interest. That first job is going to be isn't going to be the best earner, and the chances are you're going to advance your career, and when you do, it's not going to be the big things that you want. You want to make some of these bigger changes, and you'll end up having to leave to do that. So I would say wait till you get established a little bit before you go to the place that you want to stay. The one kind of caveat to that is some corporations are big enough, like Google or Amazon or some of those places, where you can reinvent yourself over and over. And those sort of places do have a lot of opportunities. The big thing is constantly assess, am I still growing? And if the answer is ever no, it's time to move on unless you have special circumstances. For most folks, that's between 2 and 3 years. Don't go on a big sprint of like 1 year job changes because that's going to hurt you. It means you probably aren't being realistic in your assessments of where you're at some level, either from when picking jobs that you already know how to do completely when you join them, or thinking that you completely mastered topics too early. Moving from job to job doesn't mean you're disloyal, and instead it's helping yourself grow in knowledge and grow financially. You typically don't get big salary jumps when you're promoted, but you can when switching jobs. Don't undershoot the pay on your next job. Look realistically at where you're at instead of value. Don't go for the job you know you can do. Do the job that you think you can do and you're qualified for, but you know it'll be a challenge. If you take a job you're completely qualified for, there's not as much room to grow. So know that it may take some time and work on your part, but if you're willing to put in the time and effort, shoot high. Otherwise, you'll really limit your growth. You also notice they build up a strong base of skills. Make sure that you have skills with broad application. Most hackers can do some level of sysadmin, programming, SQL administration, network admin, and half a dozen other things. Don't limit yourself just to your specialty. Make sure you aren't tied to a specific path when big changes happen. This will also make you a big asset when things go wrong because you understand the interactions between systems. This gives you a lot more ability to adapt to change, but also makes you a lot more valuable inside the organizations that you're part of. So one of the things that I think that people really don't do enough is figure out how to hack their career. Your job is really like any other problem. You want to make money, you want to be successful, and you want to have fun. So step one is to take a realistic inventory of where you're at. What do you know? What are your gaps? What directions do you want to head into? And what's the next step it takes to get there? So if your dream is to be a rocket scientist, but you don't know anything about physics or chemistry, you're going to need a foundation. And the same is true with security. For me, that foundation was sysadmin and networking. It gave me a great base to start with, and each job since has built onto that base. In more recent jobs, I've had goals where I wanted to accomplish things, and I was constantly assessing, am I still growing? So when I wasn't, I knew that it was time to move on, and I was also looking at how to improve financially, sometimes directly using those hacker skills. One position that I had that I think was interesting, it was a consulting position. And so when they changed the bonus structure from a straight percentage of what we delivered to some formula, it was really tough for us. We knew what went into the formula, but they didn't want to tell us how the formula worked because we knew something because they knew something that we really didn't at the time. So they had scaled the way the bonuses work. And being a consultant, you don't really have days, you have tasks, and however long it takes to get them done, that's how long you work. So by scaling the bonus, and it helped it make it feel so that if we worked more, at first we would see direct financial income improvements, but the more that we worked, the less those improvements were obvious. So most organizations strongly discourage folks from sharing salary information, but hackers. So we got together and we put together our numbers until we were able to figure out what that formula was. What it did was it helped us maximize our work to income, maximize our work to income ratio, which also helped us slow down our inevitable burnout. And at the same time, it made us feel a lot better about the process. Not everybody was a fan that we did this, but we're really advocating for ourselves. And even though it's taboo, understanding how people are compensated is really important. It's part of why we work, and by hiding that aspect, it makes it very easy to sell yourself short. It can also create some drama at work, so be responsible. Use your knowledge to empower yourself and to guide your decisions. It also helps you understand what to ask for at your next change. Building the communities within your discipline that you can trust also helps here. Figure out what your experience and abilities are worth and ask for that. If not, just a little bit more, and make sure that you're not just asking for money based off what you're currently making. So the big thing is make sure that you're honest with yourself about where you're at. If you way overshoot where you think that you're at, then and ask for that kind of money, then typically you're not going to have as great of an experience. So constantly be assessing where you are skill wise to make sure that you're being reasonable with your asks. So now that we've gotten some of the work out of the way, I think it's worth focusing a little bit on some of the other aspects of life. So working from home means you're always at work. So sometimes, at least for me, that's at least a little bit tough. So when adversity hits your personal life, sometimes this is even harder, especially some of these pandemic flavors of adversity. So the rapid changes that we've been having are hard on everybody. So after all, I think who really thought that there would be a time where our biggest focus was at the grocery store, whether or not you could find toilet paper or how many wings you'd be able to buy at the meat counter. So let's look at some of the other ways that we've been impacted and some of the other ways that this hacker mentality can help. So I've been working from home for about a decade now. And at first, everything seemed surreal. I didn't have to be in an office. And then I just started working when I was bored as well. So I'll knock this out, I'll knock that out. Next thing I knew, I was working instead of doing a lot of other things, and I got really burned out. And not only that, but I also really wasn't taking care of myself. I wasn't growing. Well, I was, but it was mostly the growth that comes from eating a ton of pizza. So I managed to find some kindred spirits who gave me some advice, and they helped me figure out some of these work from home aspects. One of the things that causes burnout is not taking time for yourself. This is one of those things that's important. Take time for lunch, take time for family, take time to go grocery shopping. And this sounds strange, but even skipping going to the doctor and other aspects people frequently do just because you have to work. Make these times for yourself. Also make time for yourself for enrichment. That doesn't have to be after work, but I do set aside part of my day, at least one day a week at work, to try something new. So sometimes I don't get all that I want done at work, and it does spread into after hours, but I try to include as much as I can into my work day so that I don't eat up my time for exercise or relaxation, because those are part of the other things that help avoid burnout. Make sure that you get that learning time. One of the biggest hacker mindsets is don't stop learning and don't stop growing, because if you make sure that you have that time to do that learning and concentrate on other work tasks, because one of the things that happens when you stop doing these enrichment things is you get stagnant and you lose ground. So similarly, make sure that you get enough sleep to avoid burnout. The tired will really hurt your work product. It makes you less able to meet challenges, and ultimately will cause you more problems than whatever work you get done in the quiet times. And I will say that a lot of the times I am really I do have a habit of working late at night just because it is quiet, but it is something that does catch up with you. So make sure that you're really assessing, am I doing too much? Am I getting closer to burnout? Because working all day and all night leads to burnout pretty quickly. Another aspect that's really important is when folks are work from home, it's really easy to lose visibility. So keep talking to folks regularly. Get a great set of headphones so that they're comfortable, and I suggest wireless ones so that you can walk around while you're talking. Make sure for key people for your career that you're talking to them at least once a week, or at most every other week, to make sure that they're aware of what you're doing and you're keeping up with what's happening within the company. Also build friendships across groups that you work with regularly and keep in touch with them. So we'll caution you, walking around with headphones can backfire. I've heard people on the treadmill, and it's sometimes hard to figure out why folks are talking to you out of breath. Another teammate had the phone accidentally come off mute while using the facilities. He couldn't figure out at the time why everyone was laughing so hard when he turned back onto the call, but he did get an internal award for being a diligent hand washer after that mishap. So while he got too comfortable and became the butt of the joke for flushing while not on mute, he still managed to really come out ahead there. Also, now that more and more folks are doing video chats, it's unavoidable that your spouse or kids will show up in the video shot at some point. So my suggestion here is don't make it weird. A friend of mine was doing a video call where her husband needed to walk across the shot. He didn't want to be unprofessional, so he tried to crawl below where the camera was visible so that it wouldn't be obvious what he was doing. That would have been a great idea had he actually crawled below what could be seen in the video. Instead, what everybody saw was her husband slowly creeping across the bottom of the screen for what seemed like an eternity while she was trying to be professional. People will get that you have a family, but they will still be talking about that strange stuff. So pets are a huge challenge from work from home. I also have a lot of cats, and I love them because they're the hackers of the animal kingdom. They rarely follow rules, and they see how far they can get away with things before they get caught. They're constantly pressing the rules of the house, and sometimes the rules of physics. My smallest cat turns into liquid to go through gates, like the gate to my office that's there to keep them out. So here are some tricks for dealing with the hackers of the animal kingdom. First of all, double-sided Scotch tape is cat kryptonite. If you don't want to pause somewhere, put double-sided tape down, and they will remember that icky. So it really keeps them from scratching on my door when it's closed when I'm doing presentations. And also when the door's open, sometimes some careful application of aluminum foil will help, since they seem to hate making noise when they aren't intending to make noise. It's kept them off counters and from doing that liquid trick with the fence. So there are also times when they've figured out how to work with the dogs to bypass these techniques. So while cats like affection, my last trick is to apply excessive affection. They'll get that, whoa, buddy, you made it weird, but you will get a little bit of peace. So I will say this though, when pets do show up in conference calls, I haven't ever seen anyone judge negatively, unless it happens excessively. Though I have seen a 30-minute meeting devolve into an hour and a half of showing off pets. So your mileage may vary. Okay, so I lied. I did get judged once. For one of our red team positions, we regularly do panel interviews. And there was a time where we had recently started doing video chats. So I'd forgotten that I was on camera, and one of the biggest chunks in the picture here came in and jumped on my lap. So for 20 minutes, I was grilling this poor guy about the intricacies of lateral movement, escalation, and hacker tools while petting the cat like Dr. Evil. I kind of managed to get a little bit of a reputation from that though, but I think everybody found it amusing at least. So working from home now isn't really how it used to be. There was a time when you had to leave the house to go grocery shopping and get basic necessities. Now with Instacart, Postmates, Amazon, and all the other delivery services, you really don't have to leave your house. Do it anyway though. If nothing else, go drive around a bit because it changes the scenery and gives you opportunities to think about things in a different context. For me, sometimes those are the places where problems really get solved. I'll go for a bike ride and have new ideas about things, or try something after trying something that doesn't work. So when I was going through my OSCP certification, which is a 24-hour certification challenge to hack 5 boxes and do a write-up in 24 hours, I got stuck, and just going for a walk with the dogs was enough to help with new ideas to try. And getting out of the house and changing venues can really help, even if it is just going and grabbing a coffee and sitting in your car with your laptop for a bit. Don't rely on texting and Slack. Include video and audio in there. Community is important, and staying connected is critical to staying relevant. Keeping up with work friends will help you be able to solve problems together in the future, and keeping connected to the community through group Slacks, Discord, Twitter, and other technologies allows you to keep engaged with the community so that you don't lose the contacts you fostered. So find hacks to do activities with people. Occasionally at work, we'll do Among Us games with Discord audio so that we can all chat together. It's something small, but keeps everyone connected. Similarly, occasionally we'll do things outside like horror movie nights, join a fitness team so that you're sharing accomplishments together, etc., so that you can all keep connected and motivated. Right now, there's a big Red Team fitness group out there called Red Team Fit, where folks are sharing their pandemic weight loss and fitness goals. It also helps keep us a little bit accountable when we hit those periods when we haven't left the house in a week. So it has some other benefits as well. One of the big things that hackers aren't really known for is their overwhelming people skills. And generally we're known as introverts, but I will say that there are more and more people that are social, and using the hacking skills in social environments can be a huge asset. So for people who are used to dealing with folks in person, the remote aspects of the pandemic can be extra hard. A big piece of this is that we read a lot of cues from other people when they're talking to us in person, and we don't necessarily get to see those over the phone. With video chats, it's a little bit easier because you can get more of these cues, but people make up meaning when you text. So new introductions is often better to start off with a medium where you can help shape conversations. One of the hacker pieces here is you can control the tone of a lot of interactions just by metering yourself. Don't come in overly confident. Instead, get people to want to work with you, create mutually beneficial outcomes, and also use your powers for negotiation. For things that are important, be the one that sends out the email that was of what was decided. If it's not written down once the conclusion's been reached, then the conversation didn't really happen, and with no other folks in the room, that can really cause issues. The big thing here is realize that everyone else and all people have parameters, and don't be afraid to use your skills there. One of the biggest challenges that I had in management was helping people understand where others were coming from and understanding why people do things, even when they're working with you. So that depends on your ability to understand their background, motivations, ability, etc. Make sure you highlight and bring those people that work with you along with you on your successes so that they can see the benefits of your work. As you get a reputation for being a collaborator and a problem fixer, more folks will want to work with you. And figuring out where folks are coming from and using those kind of things to frame your conversations will also help frame how you ask for help. Also, don't hack people for evil socially, as it'll come back to haunt you. The community is really small. Instead, use it for positive outcomes and folks will want to work with you. So thanks for coming along with me on this journey today. There were a lot of great talks, and don't forget to challenge yourself with the CTF. I have a few thoughts I'd like to leave you with. First and foremost, think like a hacker. Learn not to fear failure. If something fails, try something different and keep evolving until you get to where you want to be. Build communities of trust to help you continue to develop with skills, career, and personally. Teach yourself. Don't wait for someone to give you the answer. Learn to research and find your own answers. Listen to those around you, learn from them, figure out how they work, and figure out how to work with them to do awesome things. And persist, especially with the changes going on today. Revel in the new, make novelty your friend, don't be afraid of changes. Enable and exercise your creativity. And also use that hacker mentality to build skills with broad applications so that you can adapt better. Thanks so much for listening to me today. I'll be online through the rest of the day to chat if you'd like to. And I hope you guys have a great conference. So thanks again, and we'll see you guys in chat.
Thank you very much, Ron. That was a great presentation, man. We really appreciate it. There was one question. I don't know if you can answer this live or probably can. It says, Ron, what are some of your favorite communities and resources for staying up to date on new threats and developments in security?
I think that that's a great question. I will say that there's a couple of things that I use on a regular basis. There are more and more Slack channels that are being created. And finding the right community to get you involved in those is one of the big things that will help. Twitter is still really good for getting new information, but also blogs in general. There are a lot of blogs out there that once you kind of find a couple good articles, just staying on top of those. For communities, though, I think that the Slack communities that are out there really help aggregate a lot of that information and really help build up your contacts, your communities. What you share and all of those sort of things will be huge in order to help build your knowledge.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I don't know who's got it locked. Oh, I'm sorry, guys. I'm talking that
So
on.
good,
I'm
man.
sorry. All right. So we had one more question. Or actually,
Imposter syndrome. So
yeah.
one of the questions was, how do you deal with imposter syndrome? And so here's a little secret. So I have imposter syndrome. Everybody has imposter syndrome. We have little competitions at work about imposter syndrome. So the deal is most people are worried, especially when they know enough to know that they don't know everything, that maybe we aren't living up to what people want from us and that sort of thing. The reality of all of this is that most of us know more than we think that we know. And when we share the things that we do know, people take a lot of notice. So by being afraid to share, being afraid to collaborate, being afraid to get involved in communities, you're really eliminating yourself. So I guess easy answer is ignore it and do it anyway. But the reality is the more that you collaborate with people and you see acceptance in the community, a lot of that goes away. And so part of it is making sure that as you go through and you're talking to other people, you don't advertise being more than you are. you're realistic with your assessment of your expectations, you say what you can do, and you participate in meaningful ways. But I think Jose mentioned in chat, considering managing other people's expectations. And I think that that's sort of true with life. One of the easiest ways for people to be disappointed with an interaction is expecting one thing and getting something else. So setting expectations at work as well in other interactions is really important. But imposter syndrome is a thing. Part of getting over it is just doing stuff. So don't be afraid to get out there and try things. I will say that starting off in smaller groups is a lot easier. And one of the things about, I think, security and technology in general are people aren't very good at getting positive feedback. And so a lot of the time it feels really hard to know whether or not people liked what you did, whether or not people found it meaningful, whether everybody thought that it sucked. But at the end of the day, keep doing it. You'll see people flocking to you because you are somebody who's sharing knowledge, and find a couple people who will give you honest feedback. I have a couple people who will tell me when they think that I'm way off base, or that an idea is dumb, or that that's already been done, and they aren't afraid to share that. And find some of those people that are willing to be brutally honest with you. And what you'll find out is that a lot of the imposter syndrome isn't really warranted. So a couple more out there.
Hey, Ryan, before you go to the next question. So everybody, attendees, I just want to again thank you so much for participating, for listening to Ryan. Ryan, you did an excellent job. We need to go ahead and wrap this up because we have another session that's going to start at 10. And so I want to encourage everybody, Ryan, if you got a few minutes, log into the platform, go into the lounge, and people can chat up with you and ask you questions, and you guys can and have a blast. So with
Thanks so
that,
much, Kamal.
no, thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate you, and I appreciate all of our attendees and sponsors. Thank you so much.